What's up everybody, welcome back to How to Become an Animator, and on today's episode we are going to be talking about animating with FK and IK controls. Usually means how to deal with the arms and legs of your character, different ways to do it. We're going to be talking about the switching, matching, blending, when to use IK, when to use FK, pros and cons, that kind of stuff. So, without further ado, let's jump into Maya. Here I've got Jules. He's an animation mentor rig, and I've got him set to a low resolution, just to keep things fast. My screen recording software is kind of making things chug. What I want to talk about is FK and IK. Now what I've done is I've made sure his right is in IK, I'll go over that in a second, his left is in FK. What that stands for is inverse kinematics and forward kinematics. I'm going to be referring to this as screen left and screen right. So if I say the left, I mean our left. Alright, so on our left, or screen left of the character, I've set him to IK or inverse kinematics on the right, FK, forward kinematics. So forward kinematics, all that means is that when you move the arm, if you want to change the pose, you're going to move things forward down through the arm. That's the way the control system works. So if I want to go to a pointing gesture, I might move the shoulder, I'll move the upper arm, I'll bend the lower arm, and I'll move the wrist, and then deal with the fingers. So forward down through the arm, think of it as you're pointing forward. Now, you can see that here, so if I want to move that, do the exact same thing. I'll take his shoulder, I'll raise it up a bit. Now, here's a quick tip. When you're posing an arm in FK, which is a lot, what I recommend is a lot of people just kind of grab this and go for, wherever they think, okay, that looks like he's pointing. I don't recommend doing it that way. You can, but you could run into gimbal lock or other problems that you'll learn about later. But basically, what I recommend instead is go piece by piece, each of these little rotational axes. So say, okay, his arm is down at his side, and then he raises it up, and maybe it's a little too kind of squished in against his chest, so we'll pull it out a bit, bring it down. So I recommend going by each of these things, and you can always tweak it, but this is a little bit easier to know, what's going on in the arm to get it where you want it, and then after that you can kind of tweak it with the orb, but that's how I recommend doing it. Anyway. So that's FK, forward kinematics. Now, if you go look at the other system, you've got IK, which is where you grab the wrist control, and if you do the same thing, you'll notice you don't have something for each piece of the arm. You have, you may have the shoulder still in there, you should, but depending on the rig, you should have a hand control and maybe an elbow pivot. That's what that is right there. And so all you do here is you would move it to the pointing position, you would rotate it, and I'll do the force push again. And then the last thing is you got this elbow, and you can aim the elbow with this guy. So take this over here, and just figure out where you want that. So move it back a bit, and there's the same, more or less the same gesture. Probably should have left them both in place. Now that may have seemed a lot easier, and it kind of was. But there are pros and cons to using each of these systems, and so don't just jump the gun and go, ooh, well it was way faster to do IK, I'm going to do that for everything, because again, inverse kinematics, IK, inversely controlling the arm from the wrist back to the shoulder, which is not how naturally our bodies work. If you go to turn, shoulder, upper arm, lower arm, then wrist, that's the order of overlapping action. So forward that direction, inverse back. So pros and cons, which one to use and not to use. A quick story for you. When I first started animation, I decided that IK was easier, just to put the hand where I wanted it, move the elbow, and I was done. FK seemed like a lot more work trying to do that, and I wasn't very fast either. So I used IK for everything, and it was fine. A lot of my animations look pretty solid. However, since then I've learned a lot. It's been a couple years now. I recommend, some people use IK for everything, but very few people. I highly recommend, just from my experience, using FK for pretty much everything. So here are some really good do's and don'ts of when to use IK versus FK. If you are doing a walk cycle and you've got the arms down and they're going to be swinging, it is a lot easier with FK because any kind of swinging motion, anything with an arc, a nice path, FK is much easier because everything is rotational and it's very easy to get those arcs. You move this thing and you're getting a perfect arc. Same thing here, another arc. Because it's all rotational, it's very natural. Where IK, you have way more control. Just think about this. If you put this down at the same spot, and even now, that was easier before to point, but that took longer doing it IK than it was to do FK. That was one control. So they're pretty solid. Now let's say you want to do an arc with the IK. You got to move it over here, do this, and then you got to make sure, am I stretching too much? Ooh, how do you know how far to go? You don't want that elbow to pop. So you have a little bit more work here. Now say you're going to have him swinging his arms. Well, if you're an FK, you just swing the arms. Maybe you decide like, okay, like the forearm is dragging, and this thing is dragging a bit. You go from there, and here you're like, okay, well, I'll move this to approximately the same location, do that. Just trust me when I say anything with an arc, you really don't want to be using IK controls. You have a lot less flexibility, and you have to key more things. So trust me when I say that when you do a walk cycle, you want to be in FK. Anything with swinging motion, arms, you know, someone waving, someone throwing something, someone throwing a punch even, you're probably going to want it in FK because you want to get that nice smooth motion, which is a lot easier to get when you can say that the arm starts from down here, it was bent, and whatever was happening with the wrist is also good. And really quick, I'll just go ahead and throw in a fist. This is a really great rig. If anyone's like, whoa, that was fast, there's some really great stuff in this rig. So the idea here is, you know, if I want to make him punch, I have to do a couple of keys, but the majority of it is handled by this rotation. That's the basis of a punch right there. It's gonna swing, things are gonna be a little bit cleaner than this, obviously, but the main mechanics are very easy with that. And it's gonna look very clean and smooth. However, if I come down here, I can do something similar where I can say, all right, let me get that pose. I have to rotate this guy, it's not too bad. I can go ahead and do a fist on here as well. I'm gonna just, show you really quick. I'll set a key here. I'll move over here and I'll set my final key. Like maybe he's gonna do the same type of deal. He's gonna throw a hook. All right, I gotta tweak this over here. I do have to rotate his hand separately. And then I gotta deal with the shoulder, which is a separate key. So I gotta actually key that at 1 really quick. All right, come back out here. I didn't deal with the shoulder. I didn't do that on either, actually, so that's fine. I didn't do that great on either one, but here's the problem. 2 keys on the other system would have to do some kind of an arc. On this system, it doesn't. It's a linear motion. So what I'm gonna get is just the hand floating to that location, which is not what I want. So I'm gonna have to sit here and add more keys to try and get it, both translation and rotation. I'm gonna have to get it to feel more archy, which, it's just gonna take way longer to do and to clean up. And then what happens if you move the body? Because here's another thing. When you move the body, this is one of the pros and cons, we're talking about swinging motions. Well, IK, the system over here, this doesn't care what the body's doing, it locks it in place, which is fantastic when you want the hand to stay on something and not move. Because what happens is, if I move this thing, notice how one arm stays and one arm goes with him. If you need him to, you do a thing where he punches, his hands are here, maybe he throws a punch, maybe he's like throwing a punch, but he's also trying to dodge something else. If I need to do that, I'm gonna have him lean back to dodge. Well, now I gotta redo everything I've done on this hand. I'll fix this key. It's a little bit not stretched out, but then I gotta go to every other key. Like, oh, too far. There's that first one. Oh, too far again. You can see that it's a lot more work for these swinging motions. You don't want to be using IK for this type of stuff. Now, I've just been talking up FK and kind of bashing IK, but it's awesome, and you need to know how to use that too. It's just different. So if you've got a scene where somebody's leaning on a counter, or they're gonna grab, a big heavy object or something, let's just say you've got someone who is leaning against a wall. Let's go there. Do this on both sides. He's leaning on a wall. Here's what you've got. If you have a character leaning, in IK, it's very easy to say, all right, one hand. We'll just go ahead and rotate it. You know, you still got all the posing stuff the same. Well, let's go ahead and just throw that there. All right, let's do the same thing here. So I go this way, I'd go from the other direction. I go, okay, shoulders back, arm back a little bit, get down, twist it. And make sure to bend it on the way that does not break his arm. Make sure you keep that in mind, so don't break his arm. And then I twist his wrist. So this is an example where it is actually a lot easier to be using IK, because you'll sit here forever trying to match it. And then you have to hope that by the time you arrive here, you're like, yeah, finally, it's on the wall. Is that a natural pose? In this case, it would probably work. But, you know, if the arm were all bent in a weird way, because that's how you had to get it to stretch there, then you have kind of a problem. Now, there's a way to get around this, and you can use IK to pose it and then switch it back to FK. I'll show you that in a second. So let's say that these two things are closing in on him. Or let's just say he's pushing him out. But there they go, pushing him out. So now we need to move his arms. Here, zip it out. Now I've gone a little too far. Let me just bring that back to where his arm isn't stretching. And I'll just move this back to match, it's fine. But you can see it was really easy, just go slide. And if I needed to lock it to it, that's also easy. So if I want one to follow the other, that's another video, constraints and parenting, all that kind of stuff. We'll talk about that another time, but to lock something on, you're probably gonna be using IK. Now for the other hand, you see where I'm going with this. This is gonna be a little bit tougher. It's not too bad. Let's say he's now pushing with his fingertips. You know, he's pushed it, and he's now just kind of getting rid of it. We'll go ahead and do this. And it's like, all right, not bad. Here's the trick though, do the hand slide. Let's examine each one. Is he in the right spot? That's pretty spot on. Like, let me add a little bit of resolution to this thing. So we want his hand to stay in that square. Does it stay in that square? Yeah. In fact, perfectly. It doesn't move. It literally looks like he is pushing that wall. Great. How about the other one? Just to make this look decent, I'm gonna just go ahead and rotate his fingers, make it look like he's really pressing up against there. Here's a little tip, deal with the fingers. That one is not touching, so I'm gonna let that one stay like that. There you go, now it looks like there's some force being applied by his hand. I didn't key that though, so it's gonna look like that at the beginning, doesn't matter. So again, that one over there, perfect. Let's see how this one works, and let's go ahead and just add, you know, that's where his hand is currently contained. Let's see if he stays there. He ends up there, more or less, but no. You've got a lot of rotational values. You got this guy, this guy, this guy, and the shoulder. You have a lot more stuff to kind of worry about, and you just want things moving one direction. But you've got all these rotations. It can be done, people do it all the time, but this is one of those things where it's like, okay, IK is way easier to get this done and get it done right. Because look at the difference. So again, that's what IK is great for. It's really good for hand placement and locking it down on something. So if you need a character to put their hand on something, lean on it, whatever, and they're not gonna move it, you want IK, because that sucker's not going anywhere. And that's great, because even if he leans, let's say you've got this same thing, say you've got the same thing on both sides, and I'll just go ahead and cheat this, it doesn't matter. And he goes to lean. Well, one arm is gonna stay on the thing, one is not. Now, this is actually how the feet work almost 100% of the time. When you download a rig, the feet probably have something that you can move, and they move on inverse kinematics, IK, same thing. You move the feet instead of the hand, because you want, when he plants his foot, that if he's doing this little chicken dance tightrope walking thing, you know, he's gonna go, you want the feet to stay put. You can actually switch the legs in a lot of rigs to be IK rigs, or to be FK, sorry. So if I do that, you can see that here, now, I've got a leg, the foot, some up here I've got the upper leg, there it is. So you could go and do a whole thing here. So like now he's, you know, now he's trying to balance on something. But you'll notice that the same thing applies. One leg goes with, one does not. Now, most of the time you want the feet in IK, even though most of the time you want the hands in FK. Some exceptions of this are maybe dancers, things with legs flailing around, Spider-Man, where he's anchored by his webs or something else, and his legs are swinging below. Anything, remember, with swinging or arcing, dancers with swinging or arcing, you may want to switch it to FK for that. That's the thing. If there are big arcs and swinging motions, FK. Otherwise, lock it down, go IK. Now quickly, let's talk about how to get between them. That depends on the rig a lot of the time. So with the Animation Mentor characters, and a lot of other characters, you look for these little balls floating off the hand, and you look in the control section, you'll see some kind of FK, IK snapping switcher, something like this. So right now this arm is in IK. Some rigs have something amazing called snapping, which basically just means if you have this current pose and you really like this shape, you just love this as it is, this flow. If I take this and switch it from FK to IK, it's going to take what I have currently in FK and make the IK version match exactly what I have. That way I can continue animating without having the hand jump to some other pose. So if I go to IK, it stays put, and now I'm in the other system. Some rigs don't do this. That's going to be really helpful for if you need to do that kind of thing where you've got the big wall on one side. Switch it to IK, go ahead and place it wherever you want it, and let's just pretend this looks good. Let's just say that that's him leaning on the thing, but for whatever reason you need this to be an FK because he's about to swing out of it. Well, I can just switch it with that little dot from IK to FK, and now I'm in the other system, but I didn't have to take the time to pose it. So that can be really helpful. You just have to keep track of which one you're in and don't mix it up. And that wraps it up for IK and FK. If there's anything else that you're wondering about, questions that didn't quite get answered, or if there's anything else you want to see, please leave it in the comments down below. I'll go through that and see if I missed anything. If this video helped you out and you learned something new, hit the like button. If you know someone else who could probably use this, send it to them. And if you want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.